I think this is my favorite C.S. Lewis quote. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even to an animal. Wrap it carefully round hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. Is your heart locked up? I hope that you've opened it to the one who knows it through and through. Everything you think before you think it. Every word you speak before you speak it. Everything that heart has endured. He is the only one who can release it from sin, from guilt, from self-condemnation, from every burden you're carrying, and give you a new life in himself. His name is Jesus Christ. If you don't know him, you need to know him. And we're here to help you find him. We'd love to talk with you, to pray with you. The number on your screen will connect you to somebody who really will understand. Our prayer partners have been there and done that, and they know who is big enough. Call us today. C.S. Lewis, don't you love him? The most important and influential Christian writer of modern times, one of the greatest scholars of the 20th century. I know so much more now about the man behind the Chronicles of Narnia and some of the most profound expressions of the Christian faith after reading The Professor of Narnia, the C.S. Lewis story. Wonderful insights into the man. Walter Hooper, the last secretary who worked with C.S. Lewis, called this book the perfect biography of C.S. Lewis for children. But Will Vaus, I don't know why, he is giving this to the kids. Because it's not kiddyish. It's really a wonderful insight. Certainly very readable if children are listening.
Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. And you were a child when you got hooked.
That's right. I was 9 years old, 4th grade, public school, Southern California. One day my teacher read that opening line from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I was hooked from thereafter.
That teacher, I think we just need to take a moment to celebrate teachers who often don't know the impact of their influence in young lives.
Yes.
At the age of 9, she asked you to write your autobiography. Do you
Yes.
remember how long that was?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Do you have it written down there?
I do. 21 chapters, 64 pages for Mrs. E.
I don't know how you get 21 chapters out of 9 years, but somehow I did it.
So she got you writing, and then she got you into not just Narnia, but what would become really a life passion.
Oh, absolutely. I was just hooked on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. When I found out it was part of a series, I went home and said to my parents, "You've got to buy these books for me. I got to read the rest of them." And I did. I devoured them. And then years later, I found out that Lewis had written all sorts of other stuff, so I just began a lifelong journey.
This journey would ultimately take you and your whole family to Ireland. I didn't know he was Irish. Born in Ireland.
Yes, born in Northern Ireland.
And you would conduct tours and with the assistance of C.S. Lewis's stepson,
Well, yes,
Douglas Gresham.
Yes, in 1997, my wife and I led a tour to England, and Doug Gresham came over from Ireland and spent 3 days in Oxford with us, showing us around, showing us the kilns, C.S. Lewis's home, showing us where his mother was buried, and Lewis's grave, which you showed earlier.
So many things. What were the first big surprises? Some weird things. You know, you look at the way God leads in a life, and some of the things are hard, and yet heaven allows them to sometimes guide, to steer the gifts, the calling that he planned before we were born. One of the weird things is the boys only had one joint in their thumb.
Yes, yes. C.S. Lewis and his brother didn't have the double joints, and so it made it difficult for him to do things with his hands. He was not mechanical for the rest of his life, you know. And so he says because he couldn't make things with his hands, he had to turn to writing stories.
Mm-hmm. And fantasy. He and Warnie, his brother, loved fantasy. These dressed up animals, which we now see as characters in Narnia and other books, were part of the original playtime. Mom was a little overprotective, worried about them getting sick. And
yes, that was a concern in those days, turn of the century in Ireland. It's very wet all the time. They were concerned about TB and all these sorts of things. And so the boys had to stay inside a lot, and so they learned to do inside games. And yes, they had these little toy animals that years later, when both of the parents had passed away, they buried them in the backyard and kind of put the past behind them that way. But Lewis loved the Beatrix Potter books with dressed animals, and so it was natural that eventually he would write some stories with talking animals.
I'm looking for where he described winter, because he truly loved winter.
Oh, he did, yes, because of course in the British Isles you don't get a lot of snow, and so when it did happen, that was a very magical experience for him. And I think that's what first touched me about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, was just the beauty of winter.
Can't see where I wrote the page. I'm not sure if I'll find it quickly.
I mean, don't you love that part in the movie where Lucy first comes into Narnia through the wardrobe? And do you know how they filmed that?
No.
That little 9-year-old girl, she had not seen the set. They blindfolded her and took her out onto the set and filmed her actual expression and response to it.
Oh, and it was
which was just magical. Yeah.
It was a highlight of Christmas that year.
Oh,
that
yes.
movie coming out. The toy, how would I describe it? You describe it better. His brother created something on the lid of a biscuit box.
Yes.
And something was awakened in Jack's life, and we'll find out how he got that name in a minute, that I think reflected eternity in his heart.
Yes.
Talk to us about that, Will.
Yes, his brother created a little toy garden on the lid of a biscuit tin and brought it into the nursery. So Jack must have been very young at this point. C.S. Lewis must have been very young. And
now, when we say nursery, that's the kids' playroom.
Yeah, that's their
British
playroom
language.
up on the 3rd floor of the house. And yes, it awakened in him what he later called joy, or this experience of longing for something totally outside of this world, really. A longing for paradise.